The city of Saffron hadn't slept in weeks. Whispers passed between alleyways like ghosts. Trainers going missing, Pokémon returning with strange scars, and deep in the night, screams muffled beneath the static of old TV sets left on with no signal. Most dismissed it as urban legend. But Detective Rowan Kessler didn't believe in coincidences. Kessler was a relic, a product of the war years when trainers fought not for sport, but survival. His Arcanine had saved his life more times than he could count. Now it limped beside him, scarred and aging, matching its master step for step through the cracked streets. They had seen too much to trust in justice anymore, but something about these disappearances stirred an old sense of duty in Kessler that he thought had long since died. The trail started with a kid, 14, gone for 2 weeks. His Pikachu was found roaming a train yard, its eyes blank, fur scorched. No one knew what happened. Then another case, and another. By the time Kessler had gathered enough evidence to form a picture, the implications were too grotesque for the police to stomach. Underground battles weren't new, but these weren't tournaments. These were death matches. The ring was called the Gauntlet. No spectators, no mercy. Pokémon didn't faint. They bled. Trainers were chained beside the arena, forced to watch as their partners were mutilated or worse, sometimes made to kill with their own hands. And at the center of it all was a name Kessler hadn't heard in over a decade: Rocket. Officially, Team Rocket had collapsed years ago. Giovanni had disappeared, his lieutenants disbanded or dead. But like any parasite, the core had survived underground, festering. Kessler found the first lead in the back of an old casino, now a derelict ruin crawling with addicts and squatters. Behind a false wall was a hidden elevator. It led downward. The air changed below the surface. It was damp, metallic, humming with unseen machinery. Kessler moved through the shadows with his Arcanine at his side, watching men in blood-stained lab coats drag cages lined with torn Pokeballs and whimpering creatures. There were no names here, just numbers, tattoos, brands. He disguised himself as a buyer, just another sick bastard looking for blood sport. The deception bought him time. Weeks. Enough to get close to the inner circle. Enough to meet the woman calling herself Red Viper, a cold-eyed executive who claimed to be Giovanni's true successor. She spoke of a new age, of strength earned through blood, of Pokémon evolved beyond the constraints of mercy. She claimed the League had grown soft. Team Rocket would rise again, not as thieves, but as conquerors. But what haunted Kessler most was how many former trainers had joined her cause. Survivors of war, orphans of dead cities, those chewed up and discarded by the League's false promises of glory. They weren't evil, they were broken, and Team Rocket offered them purpose, a cruel, deadly purpose, but purpose nonetheless. In one raid, Kessler found a boy, barely alive, bound in a glass cage. His body was burned with electric scars, yet he clutched a Pokeball tightly even in sleep. Inside was a Pidgeotto, also barely breathing. The connection between them was frayed but intact. That's when Kessler understood. The gauntlet wasn't just about profit. It was revenge. Team Rocket wasn't trying to rebuild power. They were punishing the world that had tried to forget them. Every trainer, every Pokémon they broke, it was a message. By the time Kessler had enough evidence to expose them, it was too late. The government forces he contacted responded too slowly. When they raided the complex, it was already evacuated. Bodies remained, some unrecognizable. But not the leaders, not Red Viper, not the children she had twisted. Kessler left the force shortly after. He knew they hadn't killed the disease, just scratched the surface. He continued the hunt alone, tracing whispers, unmarked vans, smuggled crates of rare Pokémon. But the deeper he dug, the more something felt wrong inside his own mind. Nightmares plagued him, visions of battles he'd never fought, Pokémon he didn't remember owning. He would wake with dried blood under his nails and no memory of how it got there. One night, he returned home to find his Arcanine standing in the hallway, teeth bared at him. It didn't recognize him. He tried to calm it until he saw his reflection in its eyes. Not his face, not fully. Something else stared back. Flashes surged through him like lightning, dozens of them. Underground rooms, surgery tables, wires laced through his skull, Red Viper leaning in, whispering, "You're my Trojan horse." Memories weren't lost, they were implanted. Kessler hadn't uncovered the gauntlet. He had been sent to expose it, To play the martyr, to frame the government's inaction, to push the people to fear the return of Rocket. He wasn't the last honest detective. He was the last experiment, the last grudge. And somewhere, deep in the dark, Red Viper smiled.